I've told this story quite a few times, but I'm ready to tell it again. Waldo was conceived above a pizza shop in the Fishtown neighborhood of Philadelphia.
I am a pizza.
I am a pizza.
With extra cheese.
Extra cheese.
We're here at Pizza Brain. It's a pizza shop. It's a pizza museum. It's also my home. I live upstairs with my wife. This is Joe Hunter. He is one of the co-owners, also the head chef here at Pizza Brain. He's also really good at tossing dough. Here he goes. It's like physical poetry. In between bites here, I want to show you something that's really important to me. Thank you. Pizza Brain holds the Guinness record for the largest collection of pizza-related items in the world. It's real. It exists. It's all over this place. It's in the walls. It's in the floors. It's in the basement. It's in the attic. And we're always growing. We're always collecting. We're always looking for new things. Pizza's a lifestyle, man. And, you know, I'm not slowing down. I'm only 28, so.
Did Brian already say that I was the one that was, like, initiating wanting to have a baby?
Not specifically.
No.
He mentioned that there's some back and forth. But
Yeah. Well, yeah, we both didn't know if we wanted to have kids. We always talked about being, like, you know, the aunt and uncle to our friends' kids or whatever. And then I was holding our friend's baby, and I just went, what? Oh, oops. Shoot. I need a baby. Like, it just, like, woke something up in me.
What you doing?
Organizing stuff for Waldo.
Oh, you mean you're nesting? All right, well, might be one of your last check-ins. How do you feel?
Good.
This right here, this is the back courtyard upon which we will, I don't know, celebrate Waldo. It's gonna happen. It's gonna be monumental. If you could take a complete, uneducated guess, what's your over/under on the date? When's he coming? What about you? Take a wild stab in the dark. I'm guessing the first day of spring, March 21st.
A lovely day for a birthday.
And he was 2 weeks overdue. His vital signs were great. He was super healthy. We had no idea he was as big as he would end up being.
Oh my goodness. Oh, holy moly.
Here you go.
Huge baby. God.
Oh my God, it's gigantic.
The baby tipped the scales at 13 pounds, 8.5 ounces. Actually, he might have knocked the scales over.
His name is Waldo James Mysterious Dwyer, a substantial name for a substantial baby boy.
No one's named Waldo. The only cultural reference people have is a kid's book from like 30 years ago, and maybe Family Matters.
If Waldo's dad looks familiar, he's been on TV before as co-founder of Pizza Brain. Dwyers live above the shop, folks downstairs looking forward to Waldo's first visit.
When we got home from the hospital, the whole neighborhood just like welcomed us. It didn't matter where we went for the next few weeks, for the next 6 months. Construction workers working on the street like, hey buddy, hey pizza baby. And I'm like, yeah, something like that. And I went home just being like, holy shit, like everybody knows Waldo. This part of my life feels like a dream because this is when things were just awesome. Dad cam was given to me by one of my closest and oldest friends during Waldo's baby shower. He walked up to me and said, so, you know, you're a dad now, or you're gonna be, and...
As a dad, you don't have your video camera yet, but here it is. It's recording right now.
And I was like, just like this, you just kind of film it like this, and I was off to the races.
Moo.
Coolest. Is that how dad looks? Look at those dad shorts. That's what a dad looks like. Pretty developed palate.
It's so cute.
Pretty developed palate. Oh man, now you've got hiccups?
His eyes are all
Waldo, you just took your first few scoots with your knees and your butt.
I think we were pretty smitten with him from the beginning. I think it was like pure bliss and excitement, and then
6-month appointment. Pediatrician. I'm guessing 27 and a half pounds. What do you
I'm guessing 26.
26.0?
4.
Throughout that 6 months, Danielle started noticing this weird thing, this like gray reflection in his eye. And she would always point it out whenever we'd like throw him in the air or like he'd look at us, there was this like
a hollow sort of like white reflection in one of his eyes. But I did some research on the internet, and you know how it's like not really a good idea to do that because it's either could be nothing or could be this crazy, aggressive, rare childhood eye cancer.
Okay. We'll listen today and see if we hear it or not. Okay. I'm happy to do that. The other thing, I'm just looking at his eyes.
There's something going on with his eye. Not sure what it is. So there's an appointment that's been scheduled up at CHOP where you're checking out now and see what's up. Man, it's been like 3 years, but it's still really, it's hard to, it's hard. It's really hard to like go back to that moment because it really did change everything.
In a way, I felt like kind of prepared for it because I had the like could be nothing or could be this. So I had done a lot of research on it.
And we go to an ophthalmologist, the street at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I remember every second of that, but when it really hit was when the doctor came in and said, there's a large mass growing in your son's eye. And that just kind of like everything kind of blanked out for us. And I just remember thinking, oh man, like, okay, this isn't like just all fun and games now. There's actually something going on with Waldo. We have discovered that Waldo has a large growth blocking his retina in his left eye. So he can't see out of it right now. They don't know if it's cancerous or not. We won't be able to find that out till Monday when a specialist can see him. Waldo, when you're watching this as an older human, I don't know if you'll remember any of this part, but I hope that you're okay. I think you're going to be okay.
I mean, I felt super connected to Waldo because he was one of my best friend's kids. I just remember staring into his eyes and just feeling such a heavy vibe. And like, fuck, something's wrong with Waldo.
October 27th, 2014, we are taking Waldo to the Will Center to check out whether the tumor that is growing in his left eye is cancerous or not. It could be a potentially very long few months. It could be a long day. But I feel strangely optimistic, not because I think it's going to go one way or the other or this way or that, more because I know the facts on the ground, which is that Waldo is loved, that I am loved, so is Danielle, and that we are taken care of by our friends and our family.
It's all kind of a blur. Feels like a bad dream. It was kind of the first time I really heard Waldo cry.
They strapped him down and they did eye exams on him, and it was terrifying because he wasn't sedated or anything. It was just a 5.5-month-old, 6-month-old being held down by like 12 people in the dark, screaming bloody murder, looking like Clockwork Orange.
Brian and I just held each other in the corner while they were looking at his eyes. They had this like sort of camera thing going on. We heard
Waldo has retinoblastoma in both eyes. Retinoblastoma is the most common cancer of the eye in kids. Mm-hmm. You've done nothing to cause this. So it's
Okay.
six months of chemotherapy, then done.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know what it meant to go through chemotherapy. So while I was still kind of gathering myself, I got a text in the hospital while we're getting the diagnosis. And this is just a testament to how psychically linked I am with Waldo's uncles, Larry and Mike. I got a text, and it's like, come over for crabs tonight. We want to see you guys.
I felt a moment of responsibility for making sure that this innocent child would live.
It's like weird, but it's almost like our paternal like instincts kicked in, where it's like that if I didn't use everything in my power to help, then I don't know, I wasn't being a good friend.
It was, I mean, bar none, the most somber crab-leg dinner we've ever had. Halfway through the dinner, Larry and Mike kind of excuse themselves and just kind of lean over and say, hey, could you come upstairs with us for a second? And Larry kind of asked me in his like Larry way, he's like, so what do you want to do about this? I'm like, what do you mean? What do I want to do about this? I mean, chemo's in a couple days. I have no idea. I'm kind of terrified. I'm a little numb right now. And he's like, read this.
My son is Landon Riddle. He was diagnosed with aggressive cancer, leukemia, when he was 2 years old in 2012. We were left with no option when they told us to take Landon home and make him comfortable, and Landon was only given an 8 to 10% chance of survival. We were left really with no choice but to look for alternative treatments, and we found medical marijuana to be one. It instantly improved his life. And medical marijuana cured Landon's cancer. He will have 6 years cancer-free next month. We have decided to share our story in hopes of helping other parents.
But I read that story, and I looked up at Larry and Mike and just said, whoa, wow. I mean, so you guys are, you want to do this with cannabis oil? And they just kind of looked at me like, we've been talking about this for a week, ever since you told us there was something in his eye.
We showed Brian the story of Landon and suggested that maybe we go the route of using cannabis, not in place of chemotherapy, but in conjunction with chemotherapy.
I went home that night and stayed up till like 6 in the morning just doing research on the internet. I contacted Landon's mom. I contacted other cannabis-friendly groups around the country and just tried to understand what exactly this medicine was and why I'd never really heard of it. I mean, I grew up a right-wing conservative Christian. I have a lot of ideas. I had a lot of ideas about weed leading up to then. I smoked it for fun, but I never saw it as a sacred plant. The internet showed me that very quickly, and I fell asleep hoping I could bring it up with Danielle somehow. Hopefully she'd be okay with it, because she hated weed. She tolerated me smoking it, but the biggest thing about me and Larry and Mike was always how our breath smelled.
You just smoked pot?
Yes.
You stink. You stink like pots.
So yeah, so I wasn't well versed in our good buddy weed. I was like afraid.
But she was going to school for herbalism, and she was very much into plants and natural medicine. So yeah, that was when we decided we have to do this, and as fast as possible too, and we have to go to California to get it.
I was intrigued, I was apprehensive, but I was apprehensive about everything, so it wasn't as scary to me as chemotherapy was.
Yesterday, Waldo, you got sedated for the first time. I think you handled it like a champion. That stuff wearing off now? Yeah? All that sedation wearing off finally? You waking up? Although today's your first day of chemotherapy, you know that. I think you're going to be a champion still. You're showing me a lot of things of what it means to be strong already. So I guess I have no choice but to reciprocate it. Show you that I'm strong too. Can we do that? Can we be strong together? We're going to save that eye.
When they gave him, his first IV, I don't think he cried because he was so trusting and so sweet and so happy, always so happy. And everybody always has commented on how happy Waldo is. It's like, of course, aren't babies happy? I guess maybe not as happy as Waldo.
The next day, though, was that was Halloween. But this is your first Halloween. Perhaps one of the coolest holidays on the Western calendar. Look at you, man. You're some kind of dragon.
All right, Mr. Dragon.
Good morning, Waldo.
What do you want? Let's go, Wally.
So we know that by giving Waldo this chemotherapy, the goal is that we are treating the cancer cells, which are rapidly dividing cells. but it's also going to affect all rapidly dividing cells in his body, the healthy ones and the cancer ones. So bone marrow, because it's always making these blood cells, is very rapidly dividing. So this is where we're going to see some side effects. So think of this as a little microscopic bleeding under the skin.
We sometimes do it a little faster just because we want him to not react. Bad reaction. We give him all of these things because we're assuming we know what's going on inside of his body and how it's reacting, but because we can't say, oh, for sure it's this, this, or this, and how do we fix it, we need to cover all of our bases. Okay. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. No gagging. It's okay, baby. Great. Good boy. I'm going to stop fussing with you. Now you're turning red on me, huh? He's like, I want to go back to sleep. And sometimes if you swallow. Oh, it's okay.
He's strumming.
Okay, it's okay. Hey guys, can I have some milk, please? Okay.
It's 5:07 in the a.m., November 2nd, 2014. In roughly 40 minutes, Larry is going to pick me up, and we're going to travel across the country in order to acquire knowledge and physical medicine in the form of cannabis oil. It's highly illegal. If it were to be found out, there'd be a lot of legal ramifications, the least of which would be child protection services, perhaps. And I don't care, because I would go to jail for Waldo. Waldo, if you're watching this, I was willing to go to jail for you. I've raised close to $2,000 in 2 days to pay for the plane ticket, the rental car, and hopefully some of the medication. This is the beginning of a very epic quest, a lifelong quest, but it started today. It started on November 2nd, 2014. Remember it. It was an important one.
Why would a person need to travel to LA to get cannabis if they lived in Pennsylvania?
Well, you would need to travel somewhere that had a legal protocol if you lived in Pennsylvania to get cannabis, because it was illegal. I mean, so for example, if you were caught with it, there would be a number of potential consequences. You'd be arrested, you'd be charged, you'd have to hire a lawyer. Depending on how much you had, you could be facing jail time. Beyond that, you could lose your child. You know, I could see, and we have seen children and youth come in, say this guy's giving his son an illegal recreational drug, and take the kid away from him. Civil asset forfeiture. If they catch you with marijuana in your house, they could forfeit your house. They could take your house from you. If you went across state lines to get it and were caught bringing it across state lines, then you would be potentially subject to federal prosecution. You don't want to go, let's say, to California and bring back, you know, a 3-day supply. You want to bring back a bunch. If you got caught bringing back a bunch, you could be charged with intent to deliver. That is a significantly more serious charge. So you would be facing all kinds of civil and criminal problems just trying to get your kid better.
Larry and Mike, they'd had a love affair with that plant for a long time. So they knew a lot about it. They knew a lot about how to grow it, where to get it, how to cultivate it. I mean, they were put on this earth to dance with that plant.
Okay, one day I get a private message on Instagram from some guy named Jerry Bucket, which I thought was a strange name. And he has this story for me. And my response was that my product is available in stores. You need to fly to California, get your medical marijuana recommendation, and go buy this product. You know, I'm sorry I don't know you, but I can't help you directly. But the store, you can legally come to California and buy it at a store. And the people who work there will make sure you get what you need.
Because of Larry and Mike, we were put in contact with not only the leading extract artists in the country, but, you know, Dr. Dina, who this is what she does.
Well, I am known in the cannabis industry as Dr. Dina,
I am not a board-certified physician. It's a nickname from Snoop Dogg because I helped him get his first letter of recommendation for cannabis.
Just took out $900 to pay for Waldo's medication. Waldo, I love you. This is it. Don't get scared.
So he took that step, and it was really about introducing him to the different types of products that we have in the store and different doses and what would be better for a child. And the next step was actually getting him in touch with Brendan Krenzler. Brandon Krenzler is the father of Brave Michaela. She's another little girl who had cancer who's in remission. And Brandon was really the first open parent to discuss giving his child cannabis oil.
Brian reached out to me, and I was just like, wow, you know, I feel like helping this guy out, you know? And Aaron and I would have conversations about their family and Waldo, and, you know, if he brought something to my attention that he was concerned about, we would discuss it as we sat there, and we could advise as best we could, you know, but we're not doctors. But what we were able to advise him with helped, and that was a really good feeling. And that's kind of the guidance that I offered, is just anecdotal, experience-based, that we had went through.
Not only that, when your child is dying and your child is really sick, it is alone. I mean, you feel alone, you feel scared, you feel like the entire world doesn't understand what you're feeling. It's a connection. This person understands a very rare journey that you're on and understands the feelings of judgment and the feelings of being happy that your child is doing better, but being frustrated that something that is providing your child an amazing quality of life is not being used and offered to every child in America.
All right, so to keep things cool, I didn't film at all in Dr. Dina's office. But I'll tell you what, I'm about to go back there and pick up this stuff. She was amazing. She was accommodating. The whole experience was really positive. I can't believe that just happened. I can't believe she's a friend. How's Waldo doing?
Waldo was nauseous last night, so he was puking and freaking out, and it was hard to give him his anti-nausea medicine because he just wanted to sleep at one point. So Danielle couldn't give it to him on the 8-hour mark because it would have just fucked everything else up. It's just like a waterfall. One thing creates another, dude. It's annoying.
So his jaw, his medication is causing his jaw to tense up?
Chemo does that.
The chemo?
Yeah, it gives them like muscle and bone pain and stuff. And the doctor said that, you know, there's a possibility that he could have a hard time nursing because of pain.
So you're happy we're out in California?
Yeah, this sucked so bad. I feel crazy. I'm really looking forward to him not having to be so sick.
So we get the medicine, and we're looking at our watch, and it's like, okay, we've got an hour to get this thing in overnight shipping so it's back to Philly as soon as possible. And so we went to Target, and we bought a bunch of birthday supplies for some fictional kid, put together a whole care package for this kid's birthday party. And somewhere beneath all the nautical sea creatures and the crayons and the socks was these long syringes of cannabis oil and an ice pack.
And we had to, I don't know if should I talk about this part where you're like, where we, you know, we mailed it.
Yeah.
USPS.
Yeah, you gotta talk about that.
Larry wouldn't really let me film because he was terrified of evidence.
Get out of here with that evidence. Get out of here with that.
What are you talking about? I remember this moment. I'm waiting in line. I got the medicine in my hands. There's this huge line of people. I'm hot. Larry's really nervous, not talking. And we get up to the window. We've got like 5 minutes. I was nervous that this thing wouldn't get out for a couple days. And mind you, I'd never smuggled drugs before. Every glance, every person, I'm just like, oh my God, like they're gonna catch us, or this guy's gonna ask us what's in it.
But we got to the post office just in time, right before it's still able to overnight it, and we did. And I believe we were on the plane that night.
And I should say, I bought enough for about 8 months, a gram a month, I think. There was a lot riding in that package because if it got lost, if it got seized, if it somehow was held, I had no idea what we would do with Waldo's chemo treatment going forward. And waiting for it, when we're back in Philly, it's like, finally it shows up. The package wasn't held anywhere. We get it from the address we got it, and we opened it up, and, you know, there it was.
Close?
Close.
what we figured out from other parents learning is that if you mix coconut oil in with the cannabis oil, it helps the absorption. And you could also give less oil to the patient because they're absorbing more of it. So if you just put in oil in a capsule and take it, or oil on a strawberry and eat it, your stomach acid's gonna kill most of it. But if you put it in coconut oil, you tend to just absorb way more. So that helps parents because it's less of a cost.
It's gonna help you, Walt. I know you're in pain right now. We start with the lowest dosage possible.
I know.
Waldo's been feeling sick to his stomach. He puked when we got here. He's very tired. Waldo,
I won't sing.
what's he got?
Smells really good. First batch.
Waldo.
It sucks on your fingers all the time. You just gotta get them to...
It's not
Babe,
gonna...
stop. Hold on. It's okay, buddy. Here. Come here. It's okay. Oh, buddy.
You think we're good?
Better than a whole tube of syrup.
Hell yeah.
It's okay. Come here.
I'm sure it cost him a lot of money and flights and hotels and all that. And I still feel guilty to this day that I didn't just help him directly, but it's illegal. And I didn't know who he was, and it was some weird Instagram account, and I didn't know these people. And I made him fly all the way to the West Coast, and I still feel bad about that. The messages I get are brutal. It's like every day I wake up and it's 10 or 20 messages a day of people who really need help and who are really suffering. A lot of them are terminal, but then I get 1 or 2 messages a day of people whose life have been changed. This is the lifesaver right here. This is the one that changes people's lives. The plant behind us is known as ACDC. That's its strain name. It's 20-to-1 CBD to THC, which is what makes it rare. It's the plant that you can give to people and it won't get them high.
Well, see, this is important to talk about. People seem to be concerned when it comes to children and cannabis, because cannabis has its own stigma, and then you introduce children to that, and it gets really weird for people. But what they gotta understand is what Waldo's taking specifically, that is a plant that is grown with very little THC. THC is actually the thing that high feeling, right? The compound that makes up a cannabis plant. CBD, it's mostly that.
CBD is found in cannabis, mostly more of the hemp plant, but in the female plant, it was there. Back 20 years ago, all these strains were CBD filled. So all of these growers actually spent years breeding CBD out of the plant, which is why the THC content started soaring in all these different strains. Then we realized, whoopsies, the best part of the medicine is what we're actually breeding out. So they started breeding it back in. And now, because we've only really been experiencing the positive results of CBD for like 5 years, that we've actually been able to play around with this plant in the right numbers.
Starting to smell nice.
I feel like a lot of the issue nowadays are people spraying their plants with different pesticides or fungicides. We try to focus on the most natural way of growing the plant and organically, not spraying it, doing like a natural kind of preventative for pests and mold. So we just try to make the cleanest medicine as possible.
That's what you see me doing, going picking leaves off. That's just part of the physical labor that we do. My mom passed away from cancer at like age 59. I was in California when she had cancer, and she couldn't try cannabis medicine because she was on like a cancer trial experimental drug where they'll take her off the experimental drug if she fails a drug test. So I couldn't give her cannabis medicine. A lot of what I do now is trying to help other people who like Waldo, who could die from cancer.
After the first time of giving him the oil, probably within an hour at the most, he lightened up, smiled a little bit, was hungry, was like happy again, sitting up.
I remember coming upstairs and I just walked upstairs to the sound of laughter. Like just everyone's laughing. They're laughing at Waldo. He's crawling around. He's making jokes like he was back to himself. I couldn't believe it.
It seems like too good to be true, but it was real. And I felt like I could just like like breathe out and just be like, okay, this maybe is going to like be what helps us get through this nightmare.
Wallet, phone, keys, bag. Day 2 of treatment. In the last 36 hours, we've noticed remarkable improvements in Waldo's general overall mood. We've noticed improvements in his nausea. There hasn't really been any. There's been a little bit, but it's been tiny bits of puke. We're noticing a return to form as far as laughter and general rolling around, curiosity, ability to joke around and crawl. We gave him a dose at 6:30 this morning. He slept very soundly. He ate a lot, or at least a healthy amount.
He ate okay.
Yeah, Danielle's
Had wet diapers.
Danielle's a good scientist.
He's not dehydrated like he was the other day when he was throwing up and not eating enough.
And when's the last time you've given him any kind of pharmaceuticals, or like over-the-counter Benadryl or anything like that?
2 days ago.
Okay. And where are we going today? What are we doing? Checking his white blood cell count. All right. November 6th, 2014. I've got a lot of hope today. A lot more hope than I've had in a long time.
I'm Scott Chipman. I'm the Southern California chair of CALM, Citizens Against Legalizing Marijuana. You know, we're 100% in favor of patients getting what they need, but we're also 100% in favor of protecting patients. With any medicine, you have to measure the bad with the good. And if the bad outweighs the good, then it's not efficacious. You know, I could say that bourbon makes me feel good, so I'm going to call it medical bourbon, but it's not medicine. And that's what we see going on in the pot industry today too. It makes you feel good, so how could it be bad? It's got a green cross on a glass door. So kids think, well, how can it be bad if they're calling it medicine and adults are encouraging people to use it, and so it can't hurt me? The biggest problem is these stories, these anecdotal stories about somebody who feels better or somebody who's cured of cancer as a result of using pot. Those stories get out to the general public, and so everybody thinks, oh, jump on this pot drug addicting bandwagon, and it can't hurt me because we've legalized it, we've medicalized it, we've commercialized it. It's completely irresponsible to just say, I heard CBD help somebody, and so let's just put it out on the market and have everybody using it. First of all, almost all CBD that's on the market is contaminated. It's got pesticides, it's got THC, it's not labeled correctly, its potency is all wrong, and that's the FDA sending out warnings to companies who are just throwing CBD on the market because that's the buzzword of today in health is CBD, CBD oil, organic CBD. It's a bunch of BS, and people are being taken advantage of who see this advertising and just go out there and start taking it.
All right, we just got Waldo's first blood tests back. Thankfully, his platelets are good. His hemoglobin is good. His white blood count is low, which they expect. Hopefully it doesn't go lower. We were making up the fact that we're doctors. We were having to pretend, but Danielle started to keep a log. You know, we said, well, let's be scientific about this. Let's pay attention to how much we're giving him and when, how it affects him and how it doesn't. Okay, we've heated up the medicine. Just a head of a pin, very low dosage.
My background is in emergency and trauma medicine. I chose to go a nursing route. I did that for about 12 years, and I got a lot of experience, and I got a lot of experience working with people and patients and seeing modern medicine and pharmaceuticals, and I have a great respect for it, and I don't turn my back on it, but there's other ways.
The horrible side effects from chemotherapy, like things that you would never want to stay on the page too long as you're reading about, this medication can cause. Our oncologist kept asking every time that we would see her, she would say, how's his hearing? Because one of them can cause deafness.
Waldy. What's up, Walrus? How you doing, man?
At that time,
I didn't really have anyone to talk to. I wasn't really comfortable talking about or didn't know how I could. I don't have any adjectives left to describe how I feel. I don't even know I'm filming myself right now. We just were in the hospital for 14 hours. So Dad Cam really ended up being like a therapist. It was just this little robot that I felt like I could say anything to and not have to feel, judged or really anything. I could just say it and not really worry about it. I know this is hard, Waldo. It's probably one of the hardest things you'll ever have to deal with. Maybe not. I can't say that it's going to be better, or it's going to be okay, or it's going to be all right, but I can tell you that I'm going to be with you through it.
I'm Stacy Gruber, and I'm the director of the Cognitive and Clinical Neuroimaging Core here at McLean Hospital. I also direct something called the MIND program, Marijuana Investigations for Neuroscientific Discovery. Remember that every great discovery began with anecdotal findings. And so when people say, oh, that's all anecdotal, I always say, absolutely true. It's what we have. And it's what made us sit up and pay attention initially, like, hey, maybe there's something to this. We should be looking at this more thoroughly. I think initially people explored the use of cannabinoid-based products or cannabis for palliative care. So for the treatment of things like nausea and vomiting associated with chemotherapy or increasing appetite. But there's a big question now about going beyond palliative care. So not just addressing the symptoms of treatment, but actually being able to shrink tumors, being able to really get at the core of the problem. And I think it's a very exciting time now in terms of the potential for cannabis and cannabinoid-based therapies. We need a lot more research, but clearly there's some evidence that some of the constituents from the plant may actually have effects on tumor and may shrink tumor growth and prevent tumor growth. That's incredibly important for a number of indications, not just cancer, but it's important. Anecdotal findings often lead to tremendous discovery.
It's round 4 of Will's Eye Institute today. We're over the halfway point. Tomorrow is CHOP for chemo and Friday for chemo and all that.
They would send us home with prescriptions to go pick up anti-nausea medication, a laxative, things like that. And we would still pick them up because we didn't want to have them wait, why aren't you getting your medications, But I just kept them in the closet, I was like, oh, here's our bags of medications that he doesn't take because he doesn't need them.
A lot of milk.
All right, good. Pace yourself as you go through this, It's, 6 months, it's a lot of ups and downs and decisions. Just know if you can see through the tunnel, everything's going to be okay at the end. It's just we have to make a few little decisions here and there.
Okay.
All right? Doing well. Everything's good.
Okay. And then does the...
He's a happy little guy.
Yeah.
To have gone through all of this so far, he comes in and he doesn't run away from us or, cry when he sees us. So whatever you guys are doing, you're doing it right.
Thank you.
Whatever you guys are doing, you're doing it right. Remember this day, 2015. You're incredibly content. That's it. He didn't need one blood transfusion. He didn't need one platelet transfusion the whole time. He maintained his weight and at some points gained weight. The only thing that really you could tell about Waldo to, gather that he was going through chemo was the fact that he didn't have any hair. Hey man, I'm here for my son's last day of chemo at the Wood Center. No problem. Should I get a little hand touch? Right. Yes, thank you.
Come on back.
Thank you. Man, this is so cool. You would never remember this moment, but I will remember this forever. Yeah? You're gonna remember this too then? Cool. Well, when you're talking to your future self, you'll be glad we got this. Pump for you, Waldo. Yeah? Man, you got a lot to say today. We're here for one last day, dude. One last day. One last day. Here we go.
There we go.
And that's the code wall. That was on the outside.
I love this so much. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. 70s. So good. Yeah.
Waldo James Mysterious, you just completed chemo. How do you feel? I'm turning it off now. Waldo, 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 Waldo. Hey, Wall. Congratulations, man. You're done with chemo. No more tumors.
Good night, guys.
Congrats, dude. Wonderful day. Love you, babe.
Yeah, like it didn't feel like we needed to tell them why. You know, we didn't need to say like, well, little do you know we've been using cannabis oil. But it did feel like interesting to like kind of know that we had this like this card up our sleeve of like, yes, and like wishing that we had more like, you know, could separate it more and see like what actually like helped, you know, like break down the tumor. Come on over. Right? We're talking about him anyway. But yeah, I think, yeah, it felt like anybody would want to hear that news at the end of like a long struggle, that your baby's all clear.
So yeah, you'd think when chemo ended, that was kind of like, all right, you've gone through the hardest part. You are more aware of yourself. You're more connected to your family. Waldo's tumor-free. That's actually when life got really, it just changed. Because now I was cut loose into the real world of people's opinions and stigmas. And I had to keep this shit a secret still. And it burned me up because I had so much hope I wanted to share. And I seemingly couldn't share with anybody, not even my own family.
I think I was scared because I didn't know anything about it, and I knew it was a form of marijuana, so I thought, holy crap, my nephew's getting high, you know? Actually, I just heard in his voice, like when he would explain it, that he had done his homework and that he was not just doing it because he was like a pothead trying to make a point. Like he was desperate.
Silence is so different. Oh, I know. Same with him. Hi.
So we were in Pennsylvania. We rented a house together. This was, I think, Waldo was about 1 year old at that point in time. So he had been using the oil for that long. My brother was super passionate, like very intense that whole weekend. When he was being so passionate about it, I definitely wasn't quite ready for hearing about I didn't believe all the like amazing things that he was telling me about this thing or why it was such I still had it in my mind that, well, this is illegal and this is not okay.
Oh my gosh, your little face. Your little lips. Oh my god. He's like, who are you, crazy
No, he does it to
lady?
all of us. I'm like, I just crushed you in my face.
Oh my god. What's that?
Let's go, Wall.
Test camp.
Waldo.
It's a different camp. What's your cousins? Say hi. Hi,
You guys all look great together.
And one night we were playing a game. My dad said something about his shoulder pain or something.
We were playing a board game. It was really innocent. It was like Pictionary or, you know, one of those kind of games. And he was trying to do a motion of like throwing a javelin, I think. And he couldn't do it because his shoulder hurt really bad. And he had taken some aspirin or something and it wasn't helping. And I said, you know, Dad, I got some medicine in a jar that would really help your arm, I think.
My dad didn't like that comment, and then like one thing spiraled into another, and it was like a huge blow up.
And so I felt the need to just really push the issue and be like, why not? Why? I don't understand. Well, it's helped Waldo,
I mean, why can't you just open your mind to it? And it was really forceful. And they began to even question, like, in so many words, how can we really know what helped Waldo? Like, you know, and I was just so livid. Waldo was sleeping upstairs. I ended up just pissing everyone off. I hurt everybody. I started speaking really strongly.
We went to bed not speaking to each other. I was pissed, so we were all pissed.
It was the first time that I actually saw how angry I was. Here I was, thought I was trying to like speak the truth or do something good, and in fact I had accomplished the exact opposite. I had scared everybody and they all left. We actually haven't talked for a year. It's kind of heavy, but my parents and I aren't talking right now. Because I can't help but want to share. I guess I'm a little hot under the collar when it comes to cannabis, and it's kind of like politics or religion. You know, they say never really talk about that with your family. Well, when we get together, all I want to talk about is weed and how it helped Waldo.
Oh, shit. I got to keep on moving.
I started to spend my energy being an advocate for medical marijuana. So I started to call myself Dadvocate. So, hello again. I got to meet the governor. I got to meet senators. I got to share my story with other moms and dads.
This is becoming a much more politically safe topic.
We thought that the path that seemed logical was we're going to help join the conversations that we can pass this bill so that Waldo can have access to this medicine and all Waldos like him will have free access to this in this state at least. That's what the thinking was.
I am Tom Wolf, Governor of Pennsylvania. I have been supporting the legalization of medical marijuana. I think Senator Fulmer, Senator Leach said the same thing, that one of the things that would really help us as we think about what we want to do with medical marijuana is just to get the facts out. Just to have people understand what we can do, what it would mean to allow doctors to treat their patients with the medicine they'd like to treat their patients with. And let me just make sure everyone knows, Senator Fulmer, could you stand up and let everybody, I think you all know Senator Fulmer, right?
I'm a believer in cannabis as medicine, firmly. And I am very comfortable in my relationship with my Savior on this whole issue. I don't use it for drugs. I don't use it to get high. I don't use it to get a buzz. It can be used for my health. It can be used to make me better. And God gave it to me for that aspect.
I just thought, cool, we'll help join the wave of people that really like cheering on this bill. But it gave me the very clear perspective of like how many people actually wanted access to cannabis and didn't have it. People whose mom was dying, or their son had cancer, or their uncle, or their whoever, their best friend. Like, people saw us as a resource of information. But I kind of had my hands tied. I can tell you what I did. I got a ticket and flew across the country and snuck it over. It's still not, I can't get you this medicine. And then I actually started getting people this medicine. LA. You know, I met parents who, they didn't know where else to get it. They were as clueless as we were. They didn't have Larry and Mike's. They didn't have people that were knowledgeable with this. So they were meeting shady folks in basketball courts in Pittsburgh. So we took it upon ourselves to start to kind of create this underground circuit of medicine. I think Larry must have made like over a dozen runs in 1 year, going from the West Coast back to here, bringing medicine to other parents, to other patients. Larry and Mike at that point really stepped into their role and kind of blew me away with their compassion. I mean, considering they're seen as drug dealers, their hearts were gigantic.
Oh my gosh! Yay!
You gotta understand, like, I went from incredibly hopeful spring to then trying to put myself out there and be like, hey, weed's okay. And then, wouldn't you know it, Waldo's cancer came back.
Yeah, so after he had been totally clear, the following year, he had some little tumor seeds pop back up.
What really was frustrating to us was the fact that apparently with this type of cancer, it has like a 90% chance of returning. We weaned him off the cannabis oil at that point. And I wish we hadn't, because as soon as they're like, the tumors have returned, we need to go back into chemo, we were just like,
We've learned that with all of our cancer patients. I have people that have been cancer-free and in remission for 10 plus years, they take their oil every day as a maintenance dose. So we've learned from different people's experiences.
But it was less intense because it was 1 day a month for 3 months, where we would go in, they would put him under, and then do this procedure where they would feed the medicine directly into the back of his eye through this like catheter that went through his veins and arteries, and then came up to the ophthalmic artery and went right in there and diffused the medicine.
Yeah, we had to go back into chemotherapy for a second time.
Hey, Waldo. You're doing a great job. A little shaky.
Good work today, dude.
Oh my. Don't feel a little cold. A little cold. Cold. Did it tickle? It tickles. Woo. Ticklish.
All right, bud.
You go to daddy.
Good work today, dude. Good work today.
So this second round was, it was much easier by comparison because we knew what to do. It wasn't like so scary for us. We're like, yeah, back to the drawing board. Let's keep giving him weed.
Okay, that's good. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2.
It's crazy you had chemo yesterday, Waldo.
I mean, to this day, he still takes it, because we're not taking any chances. I mean, until he's 5, he's gonna pretty much need to be taking this every day, because the cancer might come back.
That's when I started to kind of like go off my rocker a little bit. Here I was still trying to put on the face and be Mr. Business, be Mr. Pizza. Every week was going into these hospitals to go with Waldo, having this little semblance of hope that, yeah, we got this secret and it's helping us. But what about everybody else? You know, there were kids that started chemo when he did that had now had half a brain, that radiation had begun, that had died. Like, this is just everyday life. How do you really take time after a crazy life event like that where you just didn't know what was going to happen? And now you're all still here, but no one's really been able to process it in a way that's like articulate. So you're just left with like life as it is, and you go back to life. And life isn't the same. You're not the same.
Pizza bread!
And this is, you know, this is me. I'm admitting, like, I was changing, but I didn't know how to really talk about it. When people would come up to me and ask me, like, hey, how's the kid? And they had no idea he'd even gone through chemo. I was just like, I couldn't be in that position for a while. So my business partner sitting me down, it basically began with, we've been noticing that you're just not the same person you were. We're noticing a change. Mainly, you're not as committed as you used to be. Instead of trying to explain myself, I just started being a total dick. That conversation, all of us just hurt each other so much, and I was getting so upset. The end of the conversation was them saying, why do I talk so much about weed? Why am I always at Larry and Mike's smoking weed? What they did know is we were hanging out mixing medicine for my son. I couldn't tell them that Larry and Mike saved my son's life because I was afraid that they would, I don't know, react in a way that wasn't helpful to my family. So they're like chastising me for being so passionate about a plant that saved my son's life. They don't know that, of course, so I can't blame them, but I separated myself that day. I just said, whoever you are and whoever I am, we don't see things the same way, and I can't do this anymore.
something became very crystal clear to me, that if I was going to continue on, I needed to find a more productive way to join the conversation myself, even if it just meant I need to move somewhere where I don't have to pretend anymore, where I don't have to travel across the country and spend the last bits of my life savings just to treat my son's eye cancer. Like, that's silly.
Okay, I thank you for being here, and thank you, everyone, for being here. This is a great, great day for Pennsylvania, but more important, this is really a great day for Pennsylvanians. We're not responding to a special interest here. We're not responding to somebody who makes campaign contributions. We're responding to people here who are telling us that there is a real human need here in Pennsylvania, and we did that. We responded to that. So I want to thank the advocates.
And welcome to a new day in Pennsylvania. This is a monumentous piece of legislation. This is the most important piece of social legislation we have passed in 30 or 40 years. Marijuana is medicine and is coming to Pennsylvania.
An open letter to every single one of Waldo's friends, families, buddies, uncles, aunts, internet-based acquaintances, casual observers, and the like on April 20th, 2016. Today is a very special day because I'm about to publicly share something that Danielle and I have been keeping a secret, holding it in for well over a year now. It's this: Waldo uses weed to fight his cancer. Best, the advocate, aka Waldo's dad. But cannabis, even though it's technically legal here or the bill passed, it won't be available for a couple of years. So we need to go to a place where it's readily available and I don't have to pretend I'm a criminal to do it. We have to just kind of go to the medicine.
We started to notice that it was time to move on.
Why is my family leaving Philadelphia? We're exhausted.
I was really angry at a lot of things because I thought I was doing the right thing, and everywhere I turned, things were breaking. My parents weren't talking to me. My business partners and I had pretty much separated completely. We also just didn't have the money to travel across the country every time we needed to get Waldo his medicine. I don't want to go, but I have to. We left Philadelphia with a credit card, about $400 in cash, and one-way tickets to San Francisco. I feel like as soon as Larry and Mike hugged us and drove away, I was completely released. We were released from feeling all the sentiment and nostalgia of a place I've lived in for 12 years. He's ready.
At this point in my family's life, we really don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I dreamed pretty hard up until now. I thought I had a pretty good plan of what I thought my life was going to look like at 31. But now that we've made the decision to go, I'm kind of excited because this is a new chapter. Like, we truly are on the bleeding edge of our family's story. We have no real idea what's going to happen.
Almost there. We got one more gate. Don't give up now. One more gate.
And I do think there's a distinction between walking away from something and walking towards something. And the excited part of me, the one that's not nervous and kind of terrified, knows that, I don't know, there's something we are actually walking toward. I don't yet know what it is, but That's what adventure is. That's what a quest is.
A number of people in Pennsylvania moved. They became basically cannabis refugees. A person who wanted medical cannabis in Pennsylvania in 2016 still had some problems. The bill was signed April 17th, 2016 by the governor, but that doesn't mean on April 18th it's available in a store. First you have to draft regulations. Based on those regulations, a process to determine who gets the licenses to grow. Those facilities, once those licenses are awarded, then have to build. Once the grow house is built, you have to plant a seed and it has to grow and there has to be a crop and then it has to be processed. So from April 17th, 2016 until the first dispensaries were open was about a year and a half. So someone like Brian, a year and a half is too long. This is not the country we want to be.
The history of cannabis is rather extraordinary, and there's no other substance that I can think of that's had such a storied past. From, the very first documented use of cannabis as medicine goes back thousands of years. And it was part of the U.S. pharmacopoeia starting in 1850, which meant that doctors could and did prescribe it. There was no certification process. They didn't recommend that you use it. It was a prescription, which meant that you could go to a pharmacy and get it. It fell out of favor through a number of, for a number of reasons, mostly political.
It's interesting that in 1937, when the United States government enacted the marijuana tax, one of the most vocal opponents to that tax was the American Medical Association, who claimed at the time we shouldn't outlaw this stuff because we think it may be helpful, it needs to be studied.
I believe very strongly that cannabis, and specifically some of the cannabinoids in cannabis, they qualify as medicines. And there is some research to support that it's not just something that is it's lucky that this is having some sort of benefit in patients. We have cannabinoids in our body. We produce natural cannabinoids called endocannabinoids that have defined receptors in our body that receive these cannabinoids and send a signal to the cell to do one thing or another, to act in a particular way in response to these cannabinoids. Some of these responses might be beneficial in certain diseases like cancer.
The endocannabinoid system is one of the most understudied systems that we have. Chemicals and receptors that respond to chemicals within the plant. We also have our own system of chemicals, anandamide and 2-AG, which we make on our own. That's the endocannabinoid that we make. That's our chemical. And that's really what the receptors are for. But in fact, these things in the plant, phytocannabinoids, interact effectively. So we are wired for weed.
Again, for every story you hear of cannabis cured my cancer, you hear that coffee enemas cured my cancer, or sleeping in an HBO chamber cured my cancer. So it's interesting, it's worth pursuing, but it's really hard to embrace this as a clinician and as a researcher without rigorous scientific study.
In the 19th century, we had this thing people called snake oil, right? So you got this guy in a wagon and a horse, and he's riding around the country saying, "Buy my snake oil, it's going to cure everything." Marijuana industry is the snake oil of the 21st century.
Most of what we know about the effects of cannabis on the brain, for example, come from studies of recreational cannabis users. And it is believed that most of the decrements that we see related to cannabis use is linked to THC. That's important because if you're only talking about trace amounts or almost none on board, if you will, there's not necessarily as much to be, quote, concerned about. That said, we don't have any longitudinal studies of kids on whole plant-derived high CBD products. Should we? Of course we should. Of course we should. Does that mean that people aren't going to give this to their children if this is literally their last hope? Absolutely not. People will do anything, wouldn't you?
We're very far from home, although I don't know where home is at the moment. I'm gonna roll with that. I'm gonna let that be my guide right now.
So we just started contacting anyone we knew on Instagram and through the internet, different growers and people that had started to contact and follow us since we went public with our story. So I just started contacting some of them and saying, we're looking for work, we're looking for experience, we just want to be around the medicine and the people who honor it.
It's September 5th, 2016. We came here without a plan, obviously. And as that has continued to play out, we don't feel like there's really a plan revealing itself. However, it doesn't seem like there's really work for us. The current plan as is we're in this park right now trying to make calls and make contacts and just figure out the next step forward on this path. There's been times where I've thought I want to go back to Philly. Danielle says no. She said we're never going to get these years back. We're never going to have this opportunity again to just be on the road as a family without worrying about a landlord or school or anything else, any 9-to-5 job.
I always felt in the back of my mind like the end goal is Washington, where my dad and his wife live. So I told my dad we were coming maybe sooner, maybe later, but he said, well, I have a trailer you guys can stay in.
The day we get into town, we get a call from Danielle's dad. And he says, hey, I think I found Brian a job. I was at a gas station and I ran into this lady who recognized me from, you know, my falcons, because he's like a falcon farmer, he breeds birds. It's like, yeah, she gave me her card, it had a cannabis leaf on it, and I just kind of took a chance and said, hey, my son-in-law's in town today. You know anybody who can give him some work? She absolutely did. She introduced me to a guy named Paul Lindsay. She said he was a cool dad who ran a family business. I had me a job, I think 2 days later.
Paul and Lori and the whole crew being so like open and welcoming, we're like, yeah, absolutely, move your trailer here. And so my dad hooked up the trailer on the back of his truck and he moved our trailer over here. And we don't know how long we'll be in the trailer, but for now it's home, like Waldo calls it, my home.
All right, look, Waldo. Look at the trailer. What do you think? Compared to what Waldo knew growing up in Philly, it was a completely different experience. What are those? Goats, yeah.
Oh.
By comparison, he was like a caged animal in the city. And now I was watching him run free in the forest, surrounded by pigs and chickens and ducks. It was incredible. I mean, this is for Waldo's quality of life. This is for our quality of life.
Uh-oh.
I got my first payday yesterday. That allowed us to stabilize at least and just figure out what the next move was. So going into that winter, the slow season for the cannabis industry, you know, obviously a lot of snow and ice. The family we were working for, I'll say, just like a lot of situations in that world, can be kind of tenuous, kind of impermanent. The more recreational weed becomes a thing, it does become much more cutthroat. So the family we were working with fell on some hard times and realized there wasn't really much work. And facing the winter as we were, it was just like, we gotta find something a little more stable for us. We gotta find some place with heat. And Bellingham, which was just a little bit north of this farm, happened to be this city that Danielle and Waldo had been spending a lot of time in while I was working on the pot farm.
Being in a community of people that are surrounded with the backdrop of like mountains and trees, more trees than people, beautiful lakes and oceans and streams and places that we just get to all go together and enjoy ourselves.
No sooner than maybe a day after we told each other we need to find a place with like a wood-fired stove, we found ourselves at a friend's place and Danielle just said, man, I would give anything to live somewhere with a wood-fired stove. And just like that, our friend wrote a number on a piece of paper. He goes, oh, you should call my friend Bill. He lives down the street. He's got a wood-fired stove, and I think he just had a place open up on his land. These are our noisy neighbors.
So good. So good.
And then we were connected to a family that met up with us, had us over for dinner, and I kind of told them, was very open, just like, I'm looking for work. You got anything? Do you know anything? And what happened next was so unlikely. It was the farthest thing outside my comfort zone I can imagine. I was offered a job being a waterproofer. I didn't know what a waterproofer was. It entailed me restoring crawl spaces and foundations in people's houses. The first day I got there, I was terrified because most of my life I've been avoiding this very kind of work. Just observing what my mind was doing while I was in a job that I was like, I just didn't want to do it. I was resisting it for a little bit. When I actually began to accept that this was my life, that it was affording me the opportunity to live in this beautiful paradise and just buy food, pay rent, some of my edges started to rub off. I started to just go with it. And in the going with it, in the acceptance of it, I'm really happy right now.
Life in Bellingham is very easy in a way, like compared to how I felt when I was in Philly. I think because I felt like I was kind of walking around in my memories and who I was before the diagnosis versus after, I knew that I needed to start over. And the community in Philly was great, and my friends that I still have there are so wonderful, but I felt that it was time to like find a new way to like heal.
Mom, can I have some of your pizza? Could I have a bite of your pizza?
No.
Every day I wake up, I am glad to be here. I am so thankful Waldo's healthy. I am so grateful to do life with Danielle. After everything we've been through together, it's only been 3 years. That's not a long time. On top of that, Waldo having direct access to that medicine. I mean, to be able to walk into a store and pick up what he needs, like we're picking up eggs and milk. That's really nice. I mean, all of the, up until now, all of that silliness I talk about, all the hoops, all the money, the plane tickets, the traveling, the laws, the like, what are we gonna do? What happens if we get caught? Like, all gone. I'm gonna drive to the store. Honey, pick up a box of, peanut butter puffs, and let's get Waldo's medicine too, because we're low. Cool, done. Happy ending, end of story.
Let's see, for the last year and a half, I have not felt quite like myself. And I've seen a few different doctors to kind of figure out why. I saw one more doctor, and this doctor just sat down with me and was like, well, these are your blood levels. Or they're within normal ranges, but they don't look great. So I'm gonna order a whole bunch of these tests, and we're gonna get you an ultrasound of your thyroid. And from there, they found a nodule, and they biopsied it and found out that it was cancer, which was crazy.
Thyroid cancer is incredibly common. The strategy will be to remove the thyroid gland in its entirety, to evaluate the lymph nodes that are near the thyroid in the operating room.
I knew I didn't want to just remove a gland that controls all my hormones. So I was thinking of alternatives for that treatment, and the first thing that I researched and looked into was cannabis oil. Some of the reports I read said that it caused cancer cells to commit suicide while not affecting other normal healthy cells around it. As soon as I saw it, it was like a no-brainer. I would try that because it's not foreign to me as it would have been if I hadn't seen my brother and Waldo go through that. I know that if I were to tell certain friends or family members, that they would have a similar reaction that I did initially when my brother told me that he was using marijuana, Here we go. So I just had my first dose of cannabis oil, and I wanted to share it with you. I don't feel any different, and I don't know if I'm supposed to, but I mean, emotionally I do. I feel hopeful. Yeah. I mean, I'm doing this with the approval of New York State behind me, and it still feels kind of weird. So I give you a lot of credit for flying to another state and transporting it yourself. It took some major balls, it really did. I love you. And thank you again for helping me take my baby steps. That's true. It was your baby that helped me take the baby steps.
There is no question that this is the most exciting area of medicine and research I've ever been involved with in my 20+ years here. And I think we're really at the very tip of the iceberg here with regard to the potential of cannabis and cannabinoid-based therapies. We now have Epidiolex approved by the FDA.
FDA just made a historic decision to approve the first ever prescription drug made from cannabis.
Epidiolex is used to treat people with severe epilepsy. It just got FDA approval yesterday.
A federal agency is approving a medication derived from a drug that's still illegal under federal law.
How can Epidiolex be given to anybody if in fact it's a Schedule I substance? How can, the definition of a Schedule I substance is it has no medical value and high abuse liability and no accepted safety profile. How can we now say that there's no accepted medical value if in fact we have an FDA-approved product? So it's an interesting time we're living in.
The future of medical marijuana is rather vague. There's no doubt there's going to be excitement. There's no doubt there are going to be lots of studies. But I think there's a growing appreciation for the fact that these natural substances may actually have a safe therapeutic effect. It's just a matter of trying to figure out how exactly to provide that.
There's no question that we are entering a next phase of what we're knowing about not just marijuana in general, but some of the specific compounds in marijuana. Now we know that there is an effect there. Again, the anecdotal evidence suggests that we have a situation where there is something promising here. The question is, why? What is that promise? Like, what underlies this promise? Why does it work? How does it work? How much do we need? How do we go from, a plant that is commonly associated with getting people high to something that is hopefully going to be commonly associated with getting people well? That's our goal here. We want to know, how does this thing work and how do we control it to the point where it becomes a really effective medicine? To me, that's kind of the holy grail of biomedical research, is going from an observation in the community, anecdotal evidence, to an observation in the lab, something really interesting but maybe not be clinically significant, to an observation in people that is clinically significant, where now we can help everyone.
I don't want to be a criminal, but I've been forced to over the past 20 years because I grow weed and I smoke weed. But then there's people who grow weed because they want to be criminals. And I'd say that's the majority of the old industry. But now it's transitioning over to legal grows and professionals, which I'm personally relieved by, because that's what I wanted to be. So I moved to the West Coast. I left all my family and friends to have a chance to not be a criminal anymore.
When we met Matt Rise and Jess for the first time, it felt like we were already connected and had so much gratitude. We hugged, and embraced, and there were tears, and they were looking at Waldo oh, there he is, and when we have spent time with him after the first meeting, it's very joyful, and there's always lots of food. They're very good at preparing food and making a home and space that's very welcoming and warm.
I have a lot of patients and I talk to them, a lot of them online, but very rarely do I get to hang out with them and see them, and it all comes together then. When you're like, wow, you had cancer and now you're just running around screaming. I try to not get emotional about it, but it's hard. I wish we could do more.
There's kind of an ongoing joke that Matt and I have where, especially the first time I really met him, and really hadn't spoke much about the significant role that he'd played in my life. And there was this nice, gentle moment, just like a pause. I was just like, hey, Matt, thanks for saving my son's life. He just laughed and was like, no problem, buddy.
Vegetables? Yes, please.
No, I don't want to.
Yes, please.
You want to lead it off, Wallman? Okay.
All ready? It's good to be together. Yay!
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You guys are cute.
I feel like they're family. Like I feel like they're people that we don't see very often, but when I think of them, like my heart gets really warm, and like I am very thankful for them, and I feel that we'll know them and be connected in that way for the rest of our lives.
I don't think there's really a word for it. It's like, it's undescribable. It's you can't really, there's no definition on just that effect on, I'm sorry. I feel selfish to say that I feel lucky that I got to be a part of that, but I do. I feel really lucky that we were able to help you guys in the way that we could. So there's not really a word that I can describe how it feels to have a relationship with somebody that you, I feel like more than helped, but I don't know, keep alive. Like it's there's no words, unfortunately.
Thanks. That's a word I got. Capital T, thanks.
Yeah.
Somewhere on the border between here and somewhere else, there is some peace of mind just looking to be held. Buried underneath the smoke, it's starting to get clear. The war is never over, even when the light is near. After all, there's still just endless miles, moving against the winds of time. Back from the night to the storm, into the days of before.
He doesn't seem to carry some dark memory of those times. He's always been a happy kid.
I think it was more trauma for us, though. Feel like I'm a different person. I feel changed, but not scarred. And I definitely feel stronger on the other side.
Waldo's cancer and the journey that it took us on, what seemed really dark at the time, or something that might be tragic, it ended up being an incredible teacher. Having gone through something that was really pretty hard for us, coming out the other side and seeing where we are, I mean, how could I be upset?
I really feel the difference. Like you don't know how bright a light is if you haven't been in the dark. So I feel definitely like on this other side, I'm like, so thankful to be here, you know? Whereas before, maybe I wouldn't have known the difference because I hadn't gone through such a hard thing before.
Waldo. I mean, he's been kind of guiding us the whole way. He's been showing us ourselves. I'm the best version of myself I've yet to know because of Waldo, because of the journey he's taken us on. I trust that.
Make it the chorus, a verse, a refrain. One in the same, it'll be your name. I really wonder who you might be, but whoever you are will be alright.